Welcome to Celebrating Astrology and the Astrology Interview. And today I have John Wadsworth with me. And I've been following John for a long time, and I absolutely love how different he is and original he is. Now, John, I'm sure loads of you will know him anyway, is the founder of the Kairos Astrology and has pioneered astrodrama as an intrinsic part of his astrological training school. He also leads wonderful astrological pilgrimages, my favorite word, through the Glastonbury zodiac, and also this upcoming trip through Egypt. So he's been working with a group of 16 people, preparing them for this fantastic tour through Egypt, which is coming up in March. Now, for me, which I found so impactful, he recently hosted with Jez Hughes. It's Jez, isn't it? It's Jez Hughes, who's a shamanic practitioner, a 3-part series on awakening to psycho-spiritual crisis. And John, I found these seminars so helpful, and I was blown away by your searing honesty about how your own mental health crisis when you were much younger brought you into astrology. So I'd like to sort of start there about how astrology helped you to come to terms with that crisis and then how it can help other people. So what happened for you?
Okay, so well, first of all, it's very nice to be here. Thank you, Sue, for this. This is great, and I'm very happy to talk about this. And this, my story really begins when I was 21, when I had my first encounter with astrology. I was in Spain. I was traveling with my brother. I was studying at university, a subject that I really had no interest in. And then one night I met someone in a bar, and after a very short conversation, he just identified my sign. He just said, "You must be an Aries." And I didn't know what that meant. It totally threw me. I didn't know how on earth he could know that. I knew nothing about astrology at all. But it was like a key got turned in my soul in that moment. And he started to talk about what it meant. He gave me a little book about it because he was an Aries and he didn't really know much himself, but he knew that we were the same sign. And suddenly all this synchronicity starts happening about the way that both our life paths have gone. And before I know it, I'm having an experience in myself, the like of which I've never had before. And like a revelation, like being seen for the first time, just from that one piece of information, just my sun sign.
Wow.
And I went outside, and it was a full moon, and I lay under the sky for a few hours, totally mesmerized by the stars. And I'd never done that before. I'd never really looked up at the sky before, but I noticed that the stars were moving. I never even thought about them moving. And I noticed that they were turning, and I had this moment, and this is how it came to me. It was as if a voice came out of the sky, or at least it was how sometimes a thought, a very powerful thought, can imprint you so deeply that it feels like you're being spoken to directly. And it just said, what is turning in the sky is turning in you. And that, I think, was the moment in a way that changed my life.
Wow.
And it led to a series of visionary experiences, powerful dreams, where I got incredibly excited because life suddenly changed for me over the coming weeks and months. And I stopped sleeping. I lost interest in food. I just became like ecstatic in the midst of this understanding. And of course, that also it also destabilized me in terms of my, and it made the people around me very worried because I was acting very differently to how I normally was.
Yeah.
So that's how it all began. And so, yeah, I told this story on the seminar, and I told it many times, but it's like a creation story for my sort of, for what became a kind of a rebirth, really.
What was happening to you? I mean, obviously, being an astrologer, I guess you've looked back at your chart and actually looked at what happened. So, what was going in your chart at the time?
Well, I mean, I remember when because I obviously started to teach myself astrology soon after that. And I was, I wanted to know exactly what was going on. And I was looking at the transits, and the transits were, I was having my Saturn square, my Uranus square. I mean, okay. And then I realized I had Pluto on my sun moon midpoint exactly at that moment, but none of it quite was compelling enough for me to go, there should be something more dramatic than that. It's expressing this. And then I got into secondary progressions and realized that my progressed sun had exactly touched my natal Saturn to the minute of arc at that moment when that happened that night. And I have an exact Saturn Venus conjunction in Aries. It was also my new moon. I was also new moon in Aries by progression. All the planets had lined up in Aries, and Venus and the Sun was conjunct Venus, and sorry, the Sun was conjunct Saturn. And then 5 months later, which was when I had the peak experience, which was actually the night that I was that I was put on a mental health section because I was in the midst of this, incredible visionary experience at that moment. And that was the Sun conjunct Venus to the minute. It was to the minute, Sue. It was extraordinary. I mean, you'd never expect to see this, but it was so extraordinary. And not just that, in the progressed chart itself, there was a precise yod to 1 minute of arc. 3 planets in aspect in a yod to 1 minute of arc, all 3 of them. Wow. And Saturn was at the apex of it. And there's no reason why that should be the case that I had Saturn involved in both of those progressions. Yes. It just happened that Saturn was involved in both. Jupiter and Neptune were in a sextile, making their inconjuncts to Saturn, all within 1 minute of arc. Like that, because I had that yod in my natal chart, but it had just perfected 3 planets perfecting to 1 minute of arc, which I'd never seen that before. So, incredible astrology. Yeah. Like almost like
you were called by the cosmos to do this work.
Yeah. It seemed, well, you could say that. It definitely was a moment of destiny. And I see Saturn, because I also wasn't given a choice, right? It was like, this is what you're doing with your life from now on. This is your kind of destiny, which is very Saturnian, isn't it? And it was like a realization of purpose. And when I first saw it, I thought I was excited by it, obviously, because it was so incredible. But I thought I was expecting Uranus, I was expecting and of course there was a lot of there was the Uranus square and everything. But then I realized, over the years, I've realized how much, particularly as I've matured as an astrologer, how Saturnian in a way I am as an astrologer, because I work a lot with the ceremonial aspect of astrology and with embodiment and with the zodiac as a medicine wheel. I work with this idea that the zodiac contains these 12 gateways. I call them 12 gateways to wholeness. That's the topic of my book, Your Zodiac Soul, which is really all about that, working through the year, honoring the cycles of the year. I mean, that really emerged through that experience as well early on. Yeah.
Saturn is the karmic teacher too, isn't it? It's almost you met your karma for. I mean, do you feel like you've brought through knowledge that you've had before, and it was just a matter of catching up with it this lifetime?
Yeah, I do feel that. Yeah, and I've had that confirmed. I actually had that confirmed in Egypt in 2011. I had a very powerful experience there, which again I couldn't explain. It was an inexplicable experience in the pyramid, in the Great Pyramid, and that was one of several very strong confirmations of exactly that. Yeah, I have a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on my South Node, which I've often associated with that, and I have the Sun and Chiron on the North Node.
Yeah,
so it's got multiple opposition across
bringing through the old wisdom.
Yeah,
it's so interesting. Gosh, I mean, the thing is, with so many people, is they have these extraordinary experiences and they think that they're going crazy. And I know that you had a kind of issue with that for a while because it was so impactful for you. So how did astrology help you to sort of calm down and find a sense of balance again?
I mean, I always say astrology is the thing which sent me mad and kept me sane.
That's a lovely thing to say.
Both, because I was in such a rut in my life. I had there was no meaning in my life up to that point. I hadn't found anything meaningful. I was quite depressed. I wasn't, yeah, I wasn't living my life really. And then
Mm,
suddenly it all awakens all at once. Very Aries, isn't it?
yeah.
Everything awakens all at once.
Yes. Yes.
Too
Yeah.
much for my system, it was overwhelming for my system, and yet it was somehow it must have been what I needed to awaken. And I didn't have anybody around me at that point who could understand what was going on. Literally, I was brought up in a very conventional way with very loving but very conventional parents and family, which gave me stability, but didn't meet any of these other places.
Mm,
And so I also I didn't have any friends either that were into any of this. So I literally had nobody that I could talk to about it. But
mm,
I wanted to talk about it. That's all I wanted to talk about. So I just talked about it anyway. And of course, that gets you into trouble when you're I always think if I just had one person around at that point, you could have just taken me aside and gone, I think you're having some kind of shamanic awakening or something, then I might have avoided the system.
yeah. It's
But
so.
that was what I was meant to go through. And so, but then, obviously there was a lot of, everyone was trying to persuade me to drop the astrology, especially my family, because they saw it as the thing which had caused the problem, as they saw it as a problem. But I knew I had to go to it because I knew that was also my path back to, to understand, because it was the beginning. Realized it was the beginning of a journey,
Yeah.
not an issue or a problem as
Yeah.
such.
I mean, I'm sure this happens for you all the time as well, but certainly with the clients I'm working with, is actually giving them permission to be who they are. And
Mm,
we get chucked out of school, don't we? Sort of knowing where Paris is, but no idea who we are. And
right.
we have no map, we have no education about who our psyche or what makes us tick, or the fact we're different from everyone else and we're unique. And how do we work with that? And I've had a wonderful client who had a psychotic experience. I think she was around about the age of 40 at the time, when Neptune, a bit like you, but you had Saturn, just sat on her sun, and
Mm,
she lost the plot. She was seeing visions. Well, of course she was, because she was Pisces. And it's when I said to her, oh, and she said, I've never really made sense of that. And I sort of explained the whole concept of being a Piscean and being very, the mystery, and that's the visions. And she was put on medication and
yeah,
told she was mad.
yeah. That's what happens. Yeah, because there's no space for those kinds of experiences in our
No,
culture. Certainly not, within any of the mainstream culture. So we have to. This is why we need shamanic practitioners, astrologers, people
yes,
who can hold space for people when they're going through big
yeah,
changes, and big awakenings. And it is an awakening. We're awakening to who we are within a much vaster context than we're led to believe that there is, because there is a whole spiritual world there that we're not encouraged or educated about at all. So,
and I think I don't know if you've gone through depression as well. I certainly have.
okay.
And that's another thing that's never talked about. And my journey of depression has led me to understand I was depressed because I didn't know who I was.
Mm.
And being kept in trying to be a round peg in a square hole is a very painful process. And I just wondered how you work with astrology and depression, or is that something that does enter your astrological practice?
Yeah, I mean, I do have clients obviously who come with depression. It's not uncommon, and um, I think with people who are, it actually works better to work with them over a period of time as well. So sometimes a one-off session is enough for people. It gives them a spark of, but I think when somebody's more long-term depressed, they need a bit more holding, a bit more support. It might be necessary to bring in other practitioners as well, or to encourage them to see other people as well at that point, but I think also with what astrology can offer specifically is that is that it can help a person to see that they're in a pit, that they're going through a phase of their life. This isn't how it's always going to be. And you remind them that it hasn't always been that way as well. And
Yes.
that it's not
Yes.
always going to be this way. And again, you can show them, I work a lot, as we all do, with the cycles of the planets. So, so you can show that, you're in this particular cycle and it's running its course. And to some extent, it's a kind of acceptance of I think a lot of the way that I work is about helping people to accept who they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
And that's
accept
hard,
this,
isn't it?
this
Because we live
time.
in this crazy world where everybody's an, I don't know, a list celebrity, or you're meant to be on the pyramid stage in Glastonbury, or you're hopeless. And it is about actually that most of us kind of worker bees, aren't we? But we are our individual person. We've come here to have this particular life. So how do you work with that, John?
Um, I mean, we said it earlier, I mean, a chart, it's a way of witnessing somebody. It's like you look at somebody's chart and you can, just here you are. This it's a validation of who you are and that you're unique and that you're different and you don't have to be like anybody else. You might not be destined for fame and fortune, you know, and it may be that if someone's been conditioned to think that that's what they're supposed to do, or they're supposed to achieve this, or they picked up their parents' expectations about who they should be, or society's expectations. And actually, if that's not who they are, usually it's buried somewhere. So I think again, it's about helping people to uncover what's buried,
Yes.
what gifts and talents and abilities and challenges as well. Sometimes just to help somebody to recognize the challenges that they're facing and the deeper roots of that can be
Mm.
very supportive and healing actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if you find this, but often with clients, it's about what's yours and what isn't yours,
Mm.
especially around family patterns.
Yeah.
They're taking kind of responsibility, or they've taken responsibility for their parents when they were a lot
Mm.
younger and parented their parents. I
Mm.
think a lot of people have those experiences, and that's very limiting for them. And then it's how do I break out as an adult?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In the diploma course that I run, it's based around different themes. So we have like a whole module on vocation, a whole module on relationships, a whole module on family dynamics, a whole module on money, a module on karma. So, we
Mm.
look at how the different lenses through which you can understand how the planets can express themselves, because there's myriad ways, as we know, that an astrological signature can show up. So
Sure.
it's a way of focusing the material, not so much around technique of interpretation, but more around what themes to look for, what houses of the chart to focus on, how a planet will be rendered in a as a family member, as well as being your own planet, how it can show up through other members of your family or in the dynamics in the family and things like. So it's so I think the whole. In fact, I'm just in the middle of the family dynamics module at the moment, and it's one of the richest ones, and it's one of the ones that goes deepest for people, because so much of what we carry comes from those family patterns, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you either reject them and go, I'm not part of the family, or you
Mm.
can become overwhelmed by them.
Mm. Mm.
And when you go into the rebel, it's really tough because you've got double whammy going on there because you're part of them, but you don't want to be part of them.
Yeah, and you rebel, and the rebellion's important, isn't it? Because we have to sort
Yeah.
of you have to become independent, but then we have to
Yes.
realize that we're actually. But then there's the reconciliation that comes afterwards. Otherwise, we're always fighting against,
Yes.
and then we end up fighting against the family pattern all the way through our adult relationships, which doesn't usually go well.
No, it doesn't. But it is this astonishment that we were thrown out into the world, especially in our Western culture.
Yeah.
Not a clue who we are, and that's what I love about astrology. It is an opportunity to go, oh my God, this is who I am, and this is how
Mhm.
I behave, and this is why I behave. But I don't. I can now make choices, and I think it's
Yeah,
it's that. But I wanted,
exactly. Realize you've got more choice than you think you have. It's
yeah,
ironic, isn't it? In a way, because part of it is the acceptance of, this is, in a way, you're helping a person just to come, this is why I struggle with this, to
Yes.
accept, rather than thinking there's something wrong with them. But usually people come in thinking there's something wrong with them, and it's like, no, this is just, this is what you're carrying in this life. These are some of the themes that you've got. And actually, within that, once you can help a person to recognize the parameters of their life in a way, actually, this whole world, this whole opportunity and choices open up that people didn't realize that they had. We all had that experience. And there's something about the containment of a ritual as well, where if you hold strong, you create a strong boundary around that, and then within the container that you've created, all kinds of magic can happen. So you're not limiting what can happen. You're just setting the stage in a way.
Because it can't be told, can you? You've got to have it in, you've got to
Yeah,
embody it yourself. You've got to
yeah,
have that insight that, oh, you can be told this, that, and the other. But
mm,
it's only when you embody it. And I think a ritual is so important for that.
mm.
Um, John, I want to ask you, because of the kind of work that you do, especially your interest in karma, I mean, why do you think we incarnate into physical bodies?
I think we've got unfinished business here, and I mean, I often work with this idea that we have our, because Saturn, as you said it, Saturn holds the karmic picture, because I think of Saturn as a record keeper. The accountability piece comes from Saturn, doesn't it? It's like, well, you didn't deal with that in the last life, so you're going to have to deal with it in this life, right? It's hard, and it's like, okay, you're going to have to go through this trial. But Saturn's also takes us through stages of initiation as well. So I think the whole individuation process is kind of, again, bounded by Saturn. But in the midst of that, we can show up with the golden light of who we are, right? The sun is the alchemy right there. But I think there's also, as well as that piece, we could then look to a character like Uranus, who I think carries the memory of the sort of the star seed that we are as well, which is, I always think of Uranus being the one who is kind of free of the karma, the part of us which is free of karma, which remembers that we're not only our karma. There's some spark of divinity. There's that sense of that we're always ultimately free as well. And I think that comes in that's also part of the awakening of, you're also a free spirit within that.
Yes, yes. Well, it is. It's what I. Yes, it's those. I look at Uranus. Those, as when it's talking, is those sudden insights and
Yeah.
downloads. You just go and you just see things as they are, and you just go,
You
"Oh my
just
God!"
know, don't you?
You just
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
That
I think
doesn't.
it can break through it. Almost like it breaks through
Yes.
the container, in a way it shatters the container so that another container can then be built. And that may be another layer of the karma that needs to be worked through, because it
Yes.
returns to Saturn in the end somehow. We have to come back and, okay,
Yes.
now we can work on this level of the spiral or whatever it is, that's because something got awoken, and you can't go back after that. So I couldn't go back after my experience when I was 21. I couldn't go back. I had to, if I tried to go back to my old life at that point, it would have been dire.
Well, you'd have died, wouldn't
I
you?
would have died, yeah, my soul would have died, I think.
Yeah.
And so, it's like we have to be able to respond to these moments of awakening. And I think astrology, I see astrology as a kind of, I see a birth chart in a way, in Whaley's Green talked about, as a map of the psyche. But I think it's also a map of the other world in some way as well. It's a map of the invisible world. It's a map. And I think it helps us. I think, and it's not just astrology, but astrology, I think, is an expression of it. But we could look at, I mean, I think obviously a lot about Egypt and all of the, the all of this incredible information that's contained in the tombs and temples and on the papyrus and all of it. The Book of the Gates, the Book of the Hours, these journeys that that are shown where the soul has to navigate, the duat, the other world. I think there's this other this world that we think of it, or maybe it's down under the ground, or maybe it's in the sky, but actually it may also be very close to us in a way. Almost, I often think that the other world is very close to it. It's almost like it's just an insight away. You can touch it, you can tap into it. So it may help us to navigate after we die, but I think we have to die before we die. And
Oh,
I think this is
sure.
what was happening in the so-called, in the tombs and the pyramids. I mean, these were initiation chambers where you would experience that dying before you die, maybe through a near-death experience. This is what it seems increasingly to me, that the pharaohs had this shamanic function of undergoing through, well, whether they were taking in the monatomic gold or whatever it was that was enabling them to go into these high states of being where they could leave their body and visit the world of the gods and travel to the stars and then return. If that was the role of the pharaoh, and this is what these chambers actually were, then that's incredible. And I think that we're just, why we're also fascinated probably with these subjects, with these topics, with this esoteric knowledge, is because there's that sense that is how things are ultimately, and that we can, that's the most important thing, is that, is how we evolve in our consciousness, how our soul can travel into these rarefied places, and where we go when we die, and how we move
Yes.
life as well.
I call it the yearning,
Mm,
this sense of yearning that there's something more than the physical experience of this life. And I have Pisces in my fourth house, and my IC's in Pisces. And I've lived with the yearning to go home. That's me, by the way. But I do feel like there is this absolute call to go to somewhere that isn't here, to
mm,
learn, and then to bring it back, definitely. But then there's other part of me, I'll call it the soul, whatever you want to do, that it wants the mortal experience. It wants
mm,
to have this physical experience. So I look at this experience of life as kind of walking a tightrope between the desire and the yearning to go home and the yearning to be here.
mm. Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
where you're.
Going home is also going out, because maybe it's that home in the stars, or this sense
Yes,
that we come from elsewhere, but
yes,
we also come from here, don't we? I think part
yes,
of our soul is earthbound.
yes,
Our soul is starbound. And
yes.
I think this is the thing. And because we also belong here, there's something, karmically we're drawn back here. We come back and have life after life on this planet, going
Mm.
through these trials, these initiations, these tests, experiencing all the depths of sorrow and the heights of joy. It's but there's a part of us that also comes from elsewhere. I'm convinced of that. Yeah.
Me too, completely. I mean, nutty that this I may sound. I've always regarded myself as an extraterrestrial having an experience of physical form. Because I've never felt I belong here. I've always felt I belong with the
Mm.
stars. And there's lots of people that feel like that, but that's a kind of crazy thing to say.
This is how the Egyptians saw it. This is what the Egyptians, I mean, it's clear to me looking at, when I look at the texts, and you see these, you know, these were star beings. These were beings from elsewhere that came here and left this incredible body of knowledge and experience. And this is why so many of us are drawn to Egypt and to other places, not just Egypt, of course, because we see
Yeah,
these
South America
all over the
too.
world, of these of
Mm.
these of these teachers who came perhaps to re-educate humanity after a great cataclysm. That's what I kind of believe, after the great, after the flood or
A
whatever it
flood.
was, 12,000 years ago that happened. These teachers came, and they re-inspired and reinvigorated
Yeah.
humanity.
So,
But
so
they came with another kind of knowledge, and left that for us to decipher and understand. Yeah.
and without really a rule book or a
Mm.
guidebook, I suppose. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's great mystery at work, isn't it? I think that's
It
what
is.
these hieroglyphics are. You work a lot with archetypes, and I
Mm.
and they're kind of, from my understanding, kind of portals of. If you can crack the portal or enter the portal, you
Mm.
you understand that consciousness, that
And a
information.
symbol can do that, can't it? An astrological symbol can do that. It can be a portal. I think symbols can be portals into other dimensions of experience and reality, and they can open you up. Even like me going, discovering I was an Aries, it's like it opened a portal, the symbol. And sometimes you can look at a hieroglyph and
Yeah.
it discloses a world. It sounds a strange thing to say, but it's like suddenly there's this meaning emerges out of it, which takes you somewhere. It's meaning is so powerful, and I think it's the thing that we're so hungry for in our culture. We don't just need we don't just need food. We need meaning. That's the
Well, we
meaning in a
need
way is the food of the gods, maybe, or something. It's
and purpose, some
mm,
form of purpose, whether that doesn't matter what the purpose is, but it's a
mm,
feeling, this is what I'm here to do. Doesn't matter. It can be a gardener, it can be, I don't know, the king of the jungle. It doesn't matter this what the title is, but if it has meaning, then it's this sense of I'm here, I am here, and my life has meaning, and therefore I feel that I am contributing something worthwhile. And I
yeah,
think people who are stuck in that sort of, the meaningless, the job that's meaningless for them, of course they become depressed,
mm, yeah.
or they become psychotic, or you want to escape from that because it's like a
Mm.
living hell.
We put up with it, don't we? Just because, society, we want to fit in. A lot of it's to do with fitting in, not upsetting, and we're afraid of the unknown as well. That's the other thing. When we're not given these initiatory experiences when we're younger, because
Yeah.
they're just completely, pretty much absent from our society now. And so everything becomes about preserving what you have, even if what you have isn't very much or isn't very fulfilling. We hanker after what's familiar, which is also a human thing, I think, because we want what we're used to.
Well, we're tribal, aren't we? I mean, that's the whole
Yeah.
thing. We've come here to experience tribe, I guess. And I suppose when we're not in a physical body, when we are in the other realms,
Mm.
that isn't an issue. The belonging is the belonging to our experience of the divine love, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Uh, and when we're here, the great separation has happened from the divine, or whatever you interpret that is. And
Right. Right.
that's the chronic loneliness, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. 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 We feel like we're alone in the universe. And
Yeah.
I think ultimately that's something, that yeah, it could be related to the birth trauma because you're coming through suddenly like the trauma of birth and you forget where you came from and you're just like, oh my God, I'm alone in the world. But then that is also, we're also not educated or encouraged to remember that we were actually already related and connected before we came into this world because we clearly are and clearly were. So we
Yeah.
think alone against the world, and then we try and relate to other people and to the world as a way of sort of like not feeling alone, as opposed to just remembering that we're already connected from the beginning.
Yeah,
And I
and
think
I think
that turnaround can be huge for people to see that and to
yes,
recognize. Yeah.
yeah. And also this sense of looking for somebody else to give us love, or to save us
Mm.
from this
To
endless.
save us, to complete the missing part, the thing we're yearning for, longing for, you know.
And I think this is a sadness. I mean, religion has done, let's not go into that, but there's a lot of this, the separation from the relationship with whatever we interpret the divine is, it's a chronic illness in humanity. That's how
Yeah.
I.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're in hyper materialism, aren't we now? And
Yeah,
like we're trying to, we're being persuaded that there is literally no God, no soul. You
yeah.
know,
And
so I look
humanity.
at AI in that way. I think AI is the ultimate expression of materialism. That
Yeah.
everything is replicated. Which is an absurd idea that everything could be replicated and be the same. It's not the same.
It's
It's a
not.
replication, and it's just
Not.
it's fake, and we have to get people desperately want to get something real, a real
Yes.
experience. And
So John, obviously we're going through this big shift. I mean, life has always been going through a big shift, obviously,
mm,
but there does seem to
mm.
feel like it's quite an intense shift at the moment. And I just wondered where you were with that, and where you were with the whole concept of the procession of the equinoxes, the possible end of the Kali Yuga, which is a 12,000-year
Mm.
cycle. Where are you with all of that?
I mean, I'm deeply immersed in the whole theme of the procession of the equinoxes because that's what the Egyptians left us, this incredible knowledge of their understanding of it, their incredibly sophisticated understanding of the procession, and how the shifting of the astrological ages, the their connection with the northern sky, and the shifting of the pole star and all of that, and how they honored that, how they honored the northern sky and the southern sky in different ways, and the way they aligned their temples and all of that. So I'm very immersed in that, especially at the moment. And we're going to be at the Sphinx, between the poles of the Sphinx on the spring equinox this year, which of course the Sphinx looks due east. It looks at that moment of the constellation that rises just before the sun on the moment of the spring equinox marks, of course, there's the astrological ages. So we're going to be looking at that cusp. We're going to be there. We're there at 5 o'clock in the morning, just before sunrise, to watch the sunrise, but to be with the stars before the sun comes up, and to really experience that changing of the age. Now, it's hard to know, everyone disagrees when this is. And of course, that's because Pisces and Aquarius, you know, overlap so much as constellations. And so there are different ways of calculating the shift of the age. But I mean, there is a way of calculating it if you take Regulus as the start point, because Regulus is probably the most significant star that lies directly on the ecliptic. The other one is Spica in Virgo, and apparently in Vedic astrology they lean into Spica as their marker star. But in
Okay.
the West, we've tended to lean into Regulus. And if you take Regulus as your starter star and you divide the ecliptic up into 12 parts, then this time now turns out to be the turning of the age. So that's a different way of calculating it than specifically looking at the constellational images. It's roughly the same, but this way, if you literally divide the ecliptic into 12 parts, and you take Regulus as your marker star, and you mark, the useful thing is that when we changed from into the age of Pisces, that was much clearer because it's demarcated more clearly in the constellations, and we have a strong sense that that's when the Piscean age was kind of initiated. I certainly feel that.
Mm.
So, we're 2,000 years on.
Yes.
Well, you could say, well, that means two, but then maybe it started a couple of hundred years before that, perhaps. I mean, there's always going to be this cuspal period of shift.
Yes.
But
That's
I
what
just, I just got a sense that it's now. It feels like it's happening now. It feels like we are at that change now. Some people believe it happened when the change happened when Uranus was discovered. That's a strong. And Jung said it doesn't happen until 3000 AD or something. So there's this huge discrepancy depending on how you calculate it. But there's this sense, isn't there, at the moment that I mean, everything feels so Aquarian. Like back to the AI again, right? That feels
was.
like
I know.
the whole way that but also the shift of vibration that's happening. I mean, this has to be the time.
Yes, and this great separation between those that want to remain human and feel that humanness and carry on with that, and
Yeah,
that want to escape from that and go into a whole AI technology that it's mind blowing. And I don't know if you ever read Dolores Cannon, but she she was a great seer of her time, and she talked about this time of being the big split
yeah,
between two worlds.
yeah.
And I always thought they were going to be
That's
physical. I
something like
don't
that.
think they are. I think they're going to be a level of consciousness.
Mm,
Doesn't mean to say one's bad or one's good, but you're either drawn to one or you're drawn to the other. But that
mm.
creates more duality.
It does feel. I mean, I'm coming to understand. That this separating into two worlds. It's almost like the real and the virtual somehow, isn't it? It's like people are disappearing into their virtual AI world, and then there are those who, like you say, it's for me, it's all about humanness. It's about we have to claim our humanness
Yeah.
against the technological overwhelm that's happening, and in order to remain to stay with what's real, and it may be that there are other things that are coming in, which are at the same time as the AI is coming in. There's a lightening of the vibration, which allows us to then perceive things in other dimensions. That may also be happening. I'm sure that's also happening. I think there are incredible things that are being realized now and revelations that are happening. And
Revelations. Yeah.
the ancient wisdom that, the perennial wisdom that, I think there's a refinement in our sensitivity to all of this that wasn't there like 50 years ago. So it
Yes.
does feel like it's all just exponentially accelerating to some point of great shift.
Yeah, just thinking back to what you're talking about, the pharaohs, it's almost like they had the AI in their version of AI, how they used the pyramids or the chambers to escape into a different reality.
Actually, I
And
think
you
that's what
said
they were.
the physical body. So it's almost
Yeah.
like it has been done, and it is possible to do it in a very human way, but we've progressed in our brains so much that we think we need AI to do it. Does that
Mm.
make sense to
It
you?
does make sense. Yeah, yeah. I mean, they never found any bodies in any of the so-called tombs, in these pyramids. No bodies ever found. Like that's a bit.
No.
But what they did find apparently in the Great Pyramid was this very strange powder. They
Okay.
found many, hundreds of years ago, and it got kind of kept. And it's like I was wondering what this powder is. And I've been reading I've been connecting with the Lawrence Gardner work on the secrets of the Ark and the monatomic gold, and this somehow they had this ability to turn gold into powder, into this white powder that enabled them to literally teleport, and that the pyramids were built in the way that they were as sort of, you know yeah, ways of traveling between worlds. I mean, it's all of that. I mean, I'm not somebody who would normally go for that, but I'm getting more and more into it recently, and it's really it's making more, particularly having been to these places. I mean, I had one of the most miraculous experiences and inexplicable experiences of my life in 2011 in the King's Chamber that I can't explain to this day what happened. Still, it's so beyond any kind of reason. But it happened there in that place. We're going to be there, and we've got private access there in March again. And it's something about being when you go in there. It's difficult with all the tourists snapping their cameras all the
Yeah.
time. I was fortunate to be there on my own with my ex-wife in 2011, and I had an experience that is so remarkable and so miraculous that
Happened for you.
there was any doubt in my mind that there was some other world reality. It was.
Right.
I always go back. It's like what happened to you there is beyond
Right.
anything, any sense in the material realm. So,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of people have had this experience in that place. So that's been aligned and built in such a way as you're in a place probably which was the most powerful place in the world.
Yes.
This kind of experience lying in the sarcophagus.
Yes.
So
I mean, what strikes me is how we seem to spend throughout ages being here, but not wanting to be here, wanting to escape,
mm,
wanting to go off and having these otherworldly experiences. It isn't just we just don't come here and just go, right, this is it. We're going to just do the human thing.
mm,
There is this sense of wanting to, as I said, kind of this yearning for home or yearning to have these other experiences or other experiences happening to us that say this isn't it. This human experience is not it. It's part of the journey, but it isn't it. Does that make sense to you?
we're human beings having a more than human
Yeah.
experience, aren't
Yeah.
we? And because we're living in a more than human world.
Yeah.
Clearly,
Yes.
that even just looking around in nature and looking at these other forms of life
Yes.
that we're connected to and we're related to, and when we're in an altered state experience, we start to see these other worlds that are all around us all the time. We just don't notice them most of the time.
We
and
can't
I think that
speak on a
there's
level.
something deeply natural about the gods. They were called
Yeah,
the niches, which is where we get the word nature from. They were in Egypt, and you know, they're rooted in our everyday experiences. It's just that
yeah,
our senses are so dulled most of the time nowadays that we don't experience them, but we can.
yeah.
And there are various means that we can enter those more rarefied states. And because we deep down we want to. It's scary, it's a bit frightening
We
because
want
it's
to.
it's all our security and everything that's familiar. But actually we need that.
But if you think about all the books, children's books about fairies and how children are so open still before they
Mm.
get closed down, and the
Mm.
fairy realms exist, and I think we live in a very crowded, probably quite a crowded atmosphere on Earth, but they never show themselves to. Well, why would you, if you were a fairy, why would you suddenly show yourself to some dead human being who can't, it goes, whoa, rather than going, oh, how fantastic. And I often feel that before the industrial revolution, if you can imagine the birds, the sounds of the birds, it must have been incredible. The dawn chorus must have been awesome. And then the clop of the hoof, and the sort of shout in the distance from somebody, but there would have been no noise apart from nature and the
Mm.
nature spirits.
Mm.
Something that I feel I have experienced,
Mm.
but
Mm.
not in this lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. I think we just we you know we yeah we're dull on the one hand we're dulled. Our senses are very dulled to this more, and yet I think there are also things breaking through at the same time from other
Yes,
realities at the moment. And I think there is a one of the things that I was shown when I was 21, I was shown this vision of a collective awakening. And I've never lost that vision. It
yeah,
was so clear to me. I actually thought it was happening at the time I was having my experience because that was what was happening to me. But I genuinely saw an awakening on a vast scale.
you did.
Yeah, and I do think that's going to happen. I
You
think it is
did.
happening. I think it's
It
actually,
is happening, isn't it?
actually happening. Yeah.
Yeah, but where it's going, we don't know. And I mean, I'm not so
Very
sure
uncertain.
that this
Yeah.
leap into the fifth dimension or anything like that. I don't know about all of that. Jury's out completely for me. And I'm very aware of, sort of spiritual bypassing because it's hard at the moment. And I think it's going to get increasingly dodgy, but it has to because we've got to go down into the underworld to find out who we are as a collective.
Mm.
I
That's, I
don't,
mean, as you know, I live in Glastonbury, when there's
yeah,
lots of bypassing here, of course, but there's also deep spiritual wisdom here and knowledge here. And the land is so powerful, we have a powerful portal here in Avalon, we call it Avalon, and you can feel it when people come here for the first time, they have an experience that kind of opens them up, and it's an extraordinary attractor it's like a strange attractor in the land. I
yeah.
work with the Glastonbury zodiac, as you know,
Yeah.
and I see that as a journey into the underworld. I see the zodiac in that sense as this kind of journey into into the deep imagination, because I see the underworld as kind of deep imagination in a way. And we journey into that. Let's call it an other world,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
but it's we have a dog that guards the Glastonbury zodiac, just like Anubis,
Yes. Yes.
or Cerberus guarding the underworld.
Yeah.
We have to make our offering to the dog before we enter. You know, we
Yes.
we have this ritual where we feed the dog. We
Yeah.
actually soak hot cross buns into the River Tone, which is where the dog's tongue comes out of his mouth. So
It's
we
so,
will make that offering, and then we go, and then we enter in, and we journey.
God, bring the magic back.
Yeah.
Back. John, is there anything else you'd just like to say to finish off about what your work is, or how a message for people about what we've been talking about, or people who
Yeah,
have
we've gone through. Yeah, we've covered a lot of fields in a short time. It's been great. It's all about, and thank you, because it's all about the space that's created the conversation to happen. And there's a richness that we've been able to go into these kind of areas. So thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, just a bit about my work. I mean, I run a school, 2-year training, taking people through a process of personal spiritual development through astrology, and also through to practitioner level. It's an accredited school, so you can get a certificate at the end of it, diploma, which you can then, go on a list of professional astrologers at the end. So I'm currently taking my second year through at the moment through that process. I also do one-to-one sessions. I do ongoing coaching. I'm just about to start in the spring. In April, I start a 12-month process with 12 people through the 12, what I call the 12 gateways to wholeness, through this kind of deep zodiacal inquiry. So I do that, and then I lead pilgrimages in the Glastonbury zodiac across the, we generally now do 2-day journeys in the summer through the 12. We visit each of the 12 signs in the land, and I also lead a Milky Way. There's a Milky Way path that runs across the zodiac, and I lead that as well. And then, let's see what happens in Egypt. It may be that I run more tours to Egypt as well in the future, but
I'll definitely
how this one goes first.
That is so exciting, isn't it? Bringing back that, or just connecting back with that ancient knowledge. It's the wisdom of the universe.
Yeah, it is, yeah. There's so much astrology there. I mean, the whole tour is based around the astronomy and the astrology and the alignments of the ancient Egyptians, and how you can still appreciate those today.
Yeah,
We'll go to Dendera, the Dendera zodiac, of course, and the incredible ceiling there in the Hippostyle Hall downstairs at Dendera, with the beautiful restored color images of the zodiac and the constellations and the moon phases. It's an amazing experience.
Gosh. So, and we haven't even touched on astrodrama.
No, we didn't get to it. But I work with the masks. These are a couple of the masks that I use.
Yes. Yeah.
These are Capricorn here.
Oh yes.
So yeah, I work a lot with mask and theatre, and I will be running. I do that once. I do one sort of big retreat a year with the where we enact people's birth charts. So we take somebody's birth chart, and then wearing through mask and costume, we enter into an embodiment of that planet for that person, and then it becomes a kind of spontaneous piece of healing theatre. Each person a couple of hours based on their own chart, and then they get to experience themselves in a very different way through these enactments.
Well, I'd like to invite you back later in the year to talk about that, because I want to talk to you about archetypes and all sorts of stuff, which we haven't had time to today. But John, thank you so much. I've loved this conversation. So bye for now. And
thank you, Sue.
Thanks everyone for watching. Take care. Bye.